Okay, students, how are you all? I hope everyone is fine. In the previous classes, we learnt about climate and weather, factors influencing climate and weather, seasons, advancing monsoons and retreating monsoons, global warming and climate change, impact of climate change on India. In today's class, you are going to learn some interesting developments about national liberation movements in the colonies. Children, do you know what learning outcomes we are going to discuss in this session? At the end of the session, you will be able to understand how the plight of the colonies and how they began to fight against colonial domination of the European powers. And we shall discuss how the Manchu Empire was overthrown and a republic established in 1911 under Sun Yat-sen. Children, are you all attentive? Our learning outcomes are clear. Now, all of you be ready with your textbook, pen and a notebook. Pause the video and watch again. If clarity is required, place your queries in the comment box. Now, instructions are clear that what you should have. Shall we move on to the next topic? Here we go with today's agenda. First, we shall start with words of the day, followed by pre-conceptual discussion. Later, we will have a discussion on China, two different phases, and establishing the republic. Finally, there will be a recapitulation. Children, are you all ready to gear up? We have a clear action plan to move on. Now, let me start discussing words of the day. Today's first word is militarize. Verb. Its textbook usage is he sought to militarize the nation. Its meaning is to send an armed forces to an area. Its conjugations are militarize V1, militarized V2, militarized V3, militarizing V4, militarizes V5, to militarize V6. Its derivative is militarization, noun. Its usage is in his speech, the president called for increased militarization of the border. Second word is flourish, verb. Its textbook usage is journalism flourished, reflecting the growing attraction of this new thinking. Its meaning is to develop quickly and be successful or common. Its conjugations are flourish V1, flourished V2, flourished V3, flourishing V4, flourishes V5, to flourish V6. Its derivative is flourish, noun. Its usage is his writing is plain and direct with no stylistic flourishes. Children, it is quite interesting to learn 2 words a day. Now, let us have a glance at keywords which will be discussed in today's class. Plight, sympathize, prevalent, imperialist, consolidate, galvanize, subordination, turmoil, conservative, confine, hemlines, suppress. Now, let us recall what we had discussion in the previous class. Climate and weather, factors influencing climate and weather, seasons, advancing monsoon and retreating monsoons, global warming and climate change, impact of climate change on India. In the previous classes, you all have learned how European countries established control over Latin American, African and Asian countries by 19th century. In this chapter, let us interact how these countries fought for freedom. Why were wars of national liberation or national liberation revolutions conflicts fought? National liberation revolutions were conflicts fought by nationalists to gain independence. Why were the term national liberation movements used? The term national liberation movements used in the conjunction with wars against foreign powers to establish separate sovereignty states for the rebelling nationality. How was the plight of the colonies, which means a difficult and sad situation under colonial rule? Most of these countries consisted many different kinds of people who spoke many different languages or followed different religions and seldom thought of themselves as one nation. The traditional rulers in all these countries who never sympathized, which means to show that you understand and feel sorry about somebody's problems with ideas of democracy and freedom. As new movements were taking shape, kings and emperors were inspired by the new ideas prevalent, which means that is very common at a particular time or in a particular place in Europe, like nationalism, democracy, and even socialism. Who ruled China till 20th century? There was a monarchical regime till 20th century. How was China ruled at the turn of the 20th century? At the turn of the 20th century, China was ruled by emperors of Manchu dynasty, which became powerless to protect the interests of China in relation to the Western colonial powers. These colonial powers forced the emperors to give them economic and political concessions like low import taxes, immunity from Chinese laws, maintaining armed forces, etc. As China was being ruled so, both the common people and administrators of the empire were upset with such affairs. Due to this, there were several revolts by the people and attempts at reform by the administrators. How and when was the republic established in China? The Manchu Empire was overthrown and a republic established in 1911 under Sun Yat-sen 1866 to 1925, who is regarded as the founder of modern China. What role did Sun Yat-sen play in modern China? Sun Yat-sen studied medicine but was greatly concerned about the fate of China. He studied the problems of China and worked out program of action. His program was called the Three Principles San, Min, Chui. These were nationalism. This meant overthrowing the Manchu who were seen as foreign dynasty as well as other foreign imperialists, which means people such as politicians who support imperialism, democracy and socialism, regulating industries and land reforms to distribute land to the landless peasants. Though the Manchu dynasty was overthrown and a republic was declared, the republican government led by Sun Yat-sen could not consolidate itself, which means to make a position of power, strength, so that it is more likely to continue. China came to be controlled by regional military powers called warlords, which means the leader of a military group that is not official and that fights against other groups within a country or an area. Why did May 4th movement take place in China? As the social and political situation continued to be unstable, on 4th May 1919, an angry demonstration was taken place in Beijing to protest against the decisions of the Versailles Peace Conference. Though China was an ally of Britain, China did not get back the territory seized from it by Japan. The protest became a movement called the May 4th movement. It galvanized, which means to take action by shocking them or by making them excited, a whole generation to attack old tradition and to call for saving China through modern science, democracy and nationalism. What reforms did revolutionaries advocate? Revolutionaries advocated reforms such as the use of simple language and script, abolishing the practice of foot binding, which means a cruel practice of not allowing women to have fully grown feet, and the subordination of women, which means the act of treating somebody or something as less important than somebody or something else, equality in marriages, and economic development to end poverty. After Sun Yat-sen, who tried to bring stability in China, and how was it done? The Kuomintang, the National People's Party, also called KMT, and the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, emerged as major forces striving to unite the country and bring stability. Sun Yat-sen's ideas became the basis of the political philosophy of the Kuomintang. They identified the four great needs as clothing, food, housing, and transportation. After the death of Sun Yat-sen, Chiang Kai-shek emerged as the leader of the Kuomintang as he launched a military campaign to control the warlords. He sought to militarize the nation. What was the role of Chiang Kai-shek in China? He was a conservative, which means a member or supporter of the British Conservative Party, and he encouraged women to cultivate the four virtues of chastity, appearance, speech, and work, and recognized their role as confined, which means to keep somebody or something inside the limits of a particular activity to the household. Even the length of hemlines, which means the bottom edge of a dress or skirt, was prescribed. He also tried to suppress the trade union movement, which means to put an end, often by force, to a group or an activity that is believed to threaten authority to encourage factory owners. It sought to impose military order rather than address the problems faced by the people. Children, can you guess what were the consequences of Chiang Kai shek's actions? Wait for some time. Let us discuss the rise of the Communist Party of China in the next class. Now, let us watch a video for better understanding.
National liberation movements in the colonies. We already read about how European countries established control over Latin American, African, and Asian countries by 19th century. Here, we will read about how these countries fought for freedom. Look at the map of colonies. You can see that colonies of Britain colored in pink, the colonies of France colored in blue, the colonies of Holland colored in light brown. Some countries of Asia and Africa continued to be independent, and these are shown in grey color. Even independent countries like in early 20th century, Vietnamese students went to Japan to acquire modern education. For many of them, the primary objective was to drive out the French from Vietnam, overthrow the puppet emperor, and re-establish the Nizam dynasty that had been deposed by the French. After the Republican Revolution of Sun Yat-sen in China, the Vietnamese too were inspired to establish a republican and democratic rule in Vietnam. There was a profound impact on Vietnam caused by the Great Depression of the 1930s. The French reduced Vietnam to nothing. They even tried China to different phases. At the turn of the 20th century, China was ruled by emperors of Manchu dynasty, which had become powerless to defend the interests of China vis-a-vis the Western colonial powers. These powers had carved out their spheres of influence in different parts of the China and had forced the emperors to give them economic and political concessions like low import taxes, immunity from Chinese laws, maintaining armed forces, etc. Both the common people and administrators of the empire were unhappy with this state of affairs. There were several revolts by the people and attempts at reform by the administrators.
Now, let us summarize what we have discussed till now. Why were the term national liberation movements used? How was the plight of the colonies under colonial rule? Who ruled China till 20th century? How was China ruled at the turn of the 20th century? How and when was the republic established in China? We discussed Sun Yat-sen's role, Chiang Kai-shek's role, and May 4th movement. I hope you all have understood what we have discussed till now. In the next class, let us discuss the rise of the Communist Party of China. Thank you.